I know some of you guys felt that very powerful solar contraction, didn't you? One of you even wrote and indicated to me uh, a noticeable change in the way the sun felt, in the way the heat was on your skin. Well, that's exactly part of it. And a lot of things I've been talking about have been open to interpretation. Of course, I'm not saying that the crystal garden and all this information I'm receiving is entirely correct necessarily, meaning that I'm interpreting it correctly. I do believe that some of this information is real. But I do feel very confident in one thing, and that is CERN has an undeniable link to our sun. They cannot work, one cannot be without the other. Because basically, as I've told you before, you have the celestial and terrestrial birth. Part of what's going to bring about the terrestrial element of that is CERN. That's why they have the dance of destruction around that ring of fire as basically their mascot, for lack of a better word. And if you haven't seen Thomas Sheridan's video that I posted in the community post about CERN, the fact that he's been there and talked to people who work there and said some very strange things about the place. How people claim that people who work there, they behave like they're possessed, like their behavior is extremely weird and unusual, and how that place is just, the strangeness is just over the top. And I totally believe it. Does that mean that all of them know exactly what they're doing? No. But uh, I do believe there is a common goal there, of course, right? And that is to bring through Horus, through the stargate of our sun. And every time there's a contraction like this, you see, when I talk about the fifth wave or the waves, the contractions from the dilating corona, um, these five waves are the biggest ones. Okay, so this might have been just a regular contraction that took place, but it was a powerful one. So when I say the five waves, these are the five biggest ones, and the fifth one, the last one, is the one that will actually bring about the massive coronal mass ejection itself, which will bring him through the portal. And every time there's a contraction like this, ladies and gentlemen, Osiris retaliates. He is angry. He is angry that his power is taken away from him, and he acts out in various ways. Actually, this war between Russia and the East and the West, let's just call it the East and the West, is actually an allegory between a war of the old world Osiris and the new world Horus, and the war between father and son, essentially. Of course, Russia being the old world, being home of one of the first Christian sects in the world, being Orthodox Christianity. It started in Ethiopia, but in Syria and those regions, but Russia was, and Ukraine specifically, actually was one of the oldest churches in the world. So that's what it represents. And basically, I think that even on a personal level, I could see this. Since I started talking about this stuff, I've been having a lot of strange behavior from people. And I talked about this with one of my closest friends, and she knows exactly who she is. And I'm not going to get into details, but there's some really strange behavior people are exhibiting, and strange instances. And then, of course, things like being pulled towards vices and temptations and things like that, as clearly shown by that drinking episode we're not going to talk about. And I'm not trying not to take responsibility for it. I am taking responsibility for it. I'm just saying that there is a push being made, like a sort of anger against I sense this anger against things that I'm talking about by some sort of force. And now it's come through to some sort of really awful illness that has made me really weak and lose a lot of weight really fast, and incredible stomach pain and all kinds of symptoms. And I'm trying to treat that right now, but it's been ongoing for a while now. And again, it's his way of acting out. He brings about the aggressive. Osiris brings about the aggressive bull energy. Okay, that is the Taurus energy, the fighting spirit, right? That's the sort of clash that you see in the spirit of Osiris. Horus is not exactly like that. It's a more there's a naivety basically with the spirit of Horus. Every time there's a contraction, there is a sort of residual innocence that embeds itself in the ether of the world. And it's a false innocence, obviously. This is remember I talked about those toxic pheromones and that sort of loving hypnotic sexual energy. That is the energy of Horus. The energy of Cyrus is polar opposite of that, is very aggressive. And not to say that Horus is not going to do aggressive things, um, but it's going to be an aggression out of like stupidity and a love of inflicting pain rather than like a deliberate pursuit of aggressive tendencies. It is a different type of evil, should I say? Or I don't know how else to say it, but that's how it is. And so it's interesting to note. I just wanted to really emphasize that this latest experiment at CERN really did, again, coincide with a large solar storm that took place at that same time frame, which is what I've been discussing. I made a video about a month or so ago discussing just that whenever CERN does their experiments, there is a massive solar storm. So there's a link there, in my opinion. Um, so anyway, that's the first part of the video. The second part of the video, I just wanted to talk about the strange case of Osho. And for those who haven't seen the Netflix documentary about Raj Rajneeshpurum, I can't remember the name, but it was this cult, okay, that I vaguely heard about here and there in the back of my mind. Like I knew, like all my life, that there was some cult in Washington State or Oregon or something. Knew nothing about them, but I knew who Osho was. Okay, I didn't know he had any connection to this because I've read several of this guy's books, and he's absolutely brilliant. Okay, like he truly was gifted in his teachings, and and then like he was the leader of this. I don't want to call it a cult because they're not like others. That's the thing that bothers me about it. But the story is just so strange, ladies and gentlemen. But they basically were like a commune, a massive commune in India that had their freedom taken away in India. So they decided to buy this massive ranch, thousands of acres in Oregon. And they built this ranch out of nothing. They totally filled it with farmland and infrastructure and buildings and made an entire civilization out of this ranch, okay? And it was next to this town. This wasn't a town, it was a village of 40 people. And they just sort of went about their lives. Osho had this strange philosophy, like it's a mix of blending in spirituality with materialism, and the fact that you could live with both harmoniously, sort of thing, and a lot of sort of Eastern mystical teachings mixed in with that, and sorts of things like that. And materially, they were rich, actually so rich that whatever businesses they might have had, and they had like health laboratories. There was these super weird scandals that happened later on, but they did have wealth, okay, but enough wealth to justify two $50 million jets and 200 Rolls Royces and a massive underground bunker. That amount of wealth is questionable if they were able to bring that on by their own businesses or whatever. And yes, they did have wealthy Hollywood people come join their commune way later, like right before it fell apart, though. So even that just doesn't justify the amount of money this place had and the amount of money Osho had. It just makes no sense to me. And then this weird political battle where they have first they bomb a hotel in Portland, which belonged to the commune that they owned or something. Uh, and then there's these attacks with senators and governors, and then they poisoned some town, like they poisoned their entire food supply. And then the commune started training their entire population for like military tactics and all this crazy, weird stuff. And then there's huge operation to bring them down later and to raid them. And it's like, I'm looking at this and I can't make sense of how this could possibly be an act of just this commune alone. It's almost as if it was instigated deliberately to create this sort of tension as a sort of psychological social experiment. And even Osho, with his society himself, I think that he was really trying to create one of these first Crowleyan Aeon of Horus type of communes, a sort of do what thou wilt type society. And apparently they were pretty happy, but that's not my point. My point is that they were under such relentless attack, and it can't be the influence of this little village of 40 people. It just makes no sense. I mean, this went up to international politics, like the U.S. Senate and the highest of the highest up got involved in this commune. Okay, and every government agency known to man was investigating them. And it seemed all so orchestrated and deliberate to me. Like I'm looking at this, I'm like, I mean, they couldn't have. I mean, they really couldn't have left them alone. Like they had a like 15,000 acre ranch. I mean, was it really bothering this village of 40 people? They actually ended up buying that village later, lawfully, as they bought the ranch. So again, I'm not even taking sides there. I'm not saying that this hippie commune or whatever it was correct and they were all good because they did terrible things. Like they did poison this town, okay, with salmonella or something. And they did do some terrible things. But why so much? It's like somebody was poking them with a spear constantly. And that element is where I think the CIA and rogue agencies like that came in and instigated that sort of tension, basically, which resulted in the demise of the commune, like they always do, fall apart. It's just interesting to me, though. But apparently, there's huge movements of Osho all over the world I didn't know about. The man himself, I actually have nothing against. He actually did not seem like a cult leader at all to me. Some people I talk to on Facebook and stuff do not agree with me on that, but that's just my opinion. Sorry. He told people not to follow him. He told them he wasn't their leader, things like that. But it's just the whole situation just makes no sense to me, guys. And it's all tied in with all of these events, right? With Ruby Ridge, right, in Idaho. Um, and Waco, right? Somebody mentioned to me Waco the other day. And that is another one of these strange operations, right? Even like more modern ones like Warren Jeffs, okay, like that weird Mormon cult, right, with the marrying of the underage girls. All of this stuff is tied in somehow with these agencies. I'm convinced of it. And like they bring them up, they put them to the front of the media, okay, for everyone to see. And then they study the psychological impact it has on the people viewing this. They take that information down, record it, Then they bring the commune down. And this is how they know everything about you. Good night.